Previous episode was insulation, vapor barrier, and drywall. And now it's time for plumbing. Now, because I'm going to continue to use this unit for the next while, the sink and carburetor hookup will be happening later down the road when I actually upgrade those elements. And so for the time being, I'm going to be focused on the drain and the supply elements. On the drain side, the plan is to remove this chunk and install a long sweep with a straight direct path to the P-trap. On the supply side, I'm going to redo everything above this point. There's an illegal saddle valve here. These ones leak. So I'm just going to replace everything with better components and tidy up everything in general. So that green stuff on the inside of the cold supply is flux buildup. And this is why you'd want to use the OD number 20 instead of 5. Because it's water soluble and eventually it gets washed away at some point. It's worth noting that the hot supply would have had this as well. Just that hot water does a much better job flushing it away over time. So I'm going to start with the hot, just stuffing down a sponge here so that the burrs don't fall in. And then I'm going to deburr. And now I'm going to clean the pipe of everything, including the old solder, with some 150 mesh. And then fish out the burrs and the sponge as well. Here, I'm cutting all the smaller pieces ahead of time, deburring them, and cleaning them, along with all the joints and fittings as well. And this is that number 20 I was talking about, the water-soluble flux that I don't much care to use. So, with OD number 5, you heat the pipe, feed the solder, and that's it. With this number 20 though, it's more finicky. And you'll see in just a sec what I mean when I get to the torch, but regardless, I start out by applying the flux to every surface that's going to get soldered, and then start assembling them together. And then I make sure to wipe away any flux that's not in the joints, because when the solder melts, it's going to flow to the flux. So if you got a smear of it somewhere you don't want, you're going to get flux on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 joints. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need one more. I find about 5/8 of an inch to be a good amount for a 1/2 inch pipe. So each joint I feed it about 5/8, which is to the next bend. Once everything is assembled, I will start at the lowest fitting and work my way up. And this is where I start to dislike the number 20. Instead of the straightforward heating and feeding, I'm constantly having to reheat, constantly pulling it back, and constantly checking to see if the solder takes, sometimes burning off all the flux in the process. Eventually it does take, but it's more of a drawn-out process than using the number 5. But then again, it might just be me. When it's cooled down enough to touch, I will do another wipe down because flux is corrosive and it can actually damage the pipe. And being that these are in the sink cabinet and highly visible whenever it's open, I'm scrubbing it down with some Scotch pad to remove the unsightly gunk and the heat discoloration. That's the hot water pipe with the dishwasher valve and the brass tap fitting. So I'm just going to go around, check all the joints, make sure that I see a solid ring of solder around all the edges. As long as I see that, then I'll know, based on the amount of solder that I fed in per joint, that it's making full contact between all the overlaps. The water hammer arrestor is straight thread with an O-ring, so it does not need any Teflon tape. Dishwasher's open, hot water tap, and cold water tap. Now with everything open again, I'm removing the aerator and letting it run for a while on each side. And that does it for the supplies. Moving on to the drain pipe, I'm going to cut it here and remount the thickness because I want to keep the original length of the pipe. I don't want to lose this inch here. On a side note, this section here has been notched out more than half the width of the studs, which is concerning, but then again, there's been no problems with it for the last 5 decades, so there is that. Here I've got a 1.5 inch hole saw inside a 1 7/8 hole saw, both on the same mandrel. The smaller saw spins freely inside the pipe to keep the bigger saw in place while it cuts away the overlapping thickness. And I've got the laser set up here to make sure I'm not gluing this plumb. It needs to be turned up about 1 degree so that from the P-trap to this elbow, there is about a 1/4 inch slope. So you can see the back here is drywall. This is what I meant in the previous episode, that certain things may be out of order chronologically, but for continuity's sake, it made sense to re-edit this way. Anyways, with the straight piece glued in, this drain is now ready for the P-trap. So last thing is the opening for the sillcock. First I'm going to mark where it would be leveled with the center. And then I'm going to drill about 3/8 under it so that it pitches to the outside. There's the new pilot hole. I'm doing this from the outside because if I drilled from the inside, I would have a very visible, hideous tear out. I made this cap with the same material as the siding, and this being a tapered thread, I did wrap it with plumber's tape. So there it is, the sillcock, the drain, and the supply plumbing. Next episode is taping, mudding, and painting. Till then, that's about that.